This next lesson is going to cover another one of the profiles that's often seen in a single sign-on environment. Now, this can be set up with either Drivve single sign-on or with a shared login with any other application or the device authentication. Depending on the customer's network, you'll see which one will make more sense and what you'll be able to do in each case. So here we're going to create another profile, and we're just going to call it Scan to Home folder. Now, it's also referred to as Home Directory in AD, but a lot of people know it as Home folder. So we want to start off with keeping this as simple as possible. I'm not going to give the user any input fields, although you could very easily add a field for browsing one's home directory or for naming the file, but we're just going to keep it by default here. The one thing that we often end up setting up here is document conversion. So I'm going to give the user a couple different choices like searchable PDF, Microsoft Word, and maybe just a TIFF file. We're going to turn on image processing and really nothing else. Sometimes we do separate documents and set it to separate by a blank page. Make that optional. That gives the user the option of scanning 4 or 5 or however many documents in with a blank page in between them. Sometimes if you just want to go up to the copier at the end of the day and scan all your stuff in, that's a better option than doing them all individually. In the output, we're going to enable file output. And for the folder, this is where things get a little different. We've got one of two choices depending on how the customer's network is set up. Either they use the Active Directory home directory field here, or they have the home directory set up via group policy where, for instance, it's a network share, and then let's see, users, and then let's say it's maybe the user's account name. So we see that a lot, especially in larger environments. In this case, you'll build out using the first part of the file path and then using the user's name or however that's set up. Sometimes you'll see it with maybe the user's first name and then their last name. And you can use any of these fields or these attributes and then maybe a string function to maybe just get the first letter and then the last name or whatever. But the most common thing here is the home directory. Now, this is where it matters whether or not you have Drivve single sign-on. If it's a case of just the home directory and we have the user's password, we'll try to write it to that directory as the user. However, if we do not have the user's password and we're just doing shared login with the device or some other application, you have to make sure that the user that you set up the Drivve services as has write access to all those home directories. If that user does not, and you don't have Drivve single sign-on set up, then obviously the file won't be outputted to those folders. So in the case of single sign-on, normally you're okay. If you're just doing shared login or device authentication, you're going to want to make sure that using this IIS configuration tool, that this user has write access to all the user's home directories. I'm going to go ahead and give the file a default name. Let's just say it's new scan, and let's do the device name and maybe the date and the time. That way the user can keep track of it. And we're going to see here how simple this is for the user. The user will walk up. They have scanned a home folder or home directory. They can either change the file type here. They can separate by blank pages. And when they scan, it'll automatically be put in their home directory, and it'll automatically be named using those variables. So one thing that we do often is set up an optional file name field. So let's make a field called name the file, and let's make sure that the user knows that it's optional. Sometimes the customer will ask for this because of a request for certain users. But what we don't want to do is force all the users to have to name the file each time. So I'm going to do name the file optional, and here in the output, rather than always use these variables, I'm going to use an if condition here. So the if condition, you can read up on it here, but basically I'm going to walk you through it. It's if a certain variable, in this case name the file, and then the operator, and we're going to say equals So if name the file equals, and then here if you need to look at it, you can go back down to there. If name the file equals, we're going to say nothing, so they leave it blank. Then we want to use new scan, device name, and date and time. The false field is if that condition is false. So if name the file does not equal nothing, or in other words, they've entered something, we want the name of the file or this condition here to resolve to name the file, so whatever they put in there. In case sensitive, we're going to say that no, it's not case sensitive. So what that means is the user walks up, they have the option of naming the file. If they do not name the file, it's not going to just be junk, it'll be scan and then the device that it came from and the time, so they can recognize it. So you see here now there's a third field there, name the file, convert to, and separate by blank pages. One thing that I recommend is rather than giving yourself a headache up front, I would start off with none of those things. If they're not asking for options, don't give them options, and that way we'll just make it a simple one-touch button for the user. And on devices like the Sharp and the Toshiba, where you can create separate applications for each profile, it's nice to have one simple one-touch scan to home folder button. So remember that the type of scan to home folder output depends on what type of login you have. You want to always make sure that the customer shows you in Active Directory that that AD attribute is filled in, and I'll show you where to look real quick. If it's not filled in and you just assume it is, then you'll get errors in the logs, and obviously the files won't show up anywhere. So if I'm in AD and I look at that user, you see in the Profile tab there's a home folder. And in this case, as you see, the home folder is not set up. So either it would be set up here or it would be set up via group policy. If this is what Drivve is trying to resolve using that home directory attribute. So just make sure that that's actually filled in. If it's not, it might have to be set up via group policy. Now if you get a request from the customer to browse the home directories, which is not too uncommon, sometimes if there's a lot of subfolders and things in there and they're used extensively, you can also set that up here in the input. So rather than just defaulting it to that home directory attribute and output, we're going to give them an option here for browse your home folder. And it's going to be a folder selection. And here, again, we'd either put in the home directory attribute or the IP address or whatever the share, and then build that out dynamically. But what I'm going to do here is just put in home directory. And normally it's browsable because there's not that many folders in a home directory. We're not going to search it. And then here in authentication options, this is where we want to make sure that we actually have the user's password. If we don't have the password, then obviously we don't want to do that because we're going to have to make them enter their password every time. If you do not have Drivve print set up with single sign-on, you're going to want to use the service account and make sure that that service account has write access. So because that's a folder selection, it should try to use that automatically in the output, but what you're going to want to do is leave that blank at least. If you have a folder selection field here in the input, it will automatically, see the type is folder selection, it'll automatically put that in the output there.